My name is Mary Dame, and I have been chosen to be the featured carver this year, and I'm just thrilled to do it. And I have most of my carvings here, and I'll explain some of the things that I do and how I've done it. And for 10 years, I worked with birds only because I was working in a hospital as a nurse in the operating room, and I didn't have a lot of time, so I just did birds, and that's how I started. And this is my number 1 bird that I started with, and this is my number 2. I love their colors, and I love the lightness of the feeling that I get when I hear them in my trees at home. I feed birds, and it just makes me feel good. And I mean, look at the gorgeous colors on this avocet. It is so pretty, and it just makes you kind of take a deep breath and say, how did God create all of these beautiful things? It was just amazing. And so when I started carving birds, I realized that I could do it, and that I had a talent, and that I would just try to do more. And after about 10 years, I met a lady named Susan who showed me how to use a knife and chisels and all of the other kinds of tools. And so that is what's taken off from this. I just try to see pictures and look at the colors and look at the stance, look at the feathers. I try to make them as realistic as I can. They're my serious thing, and I really love them. This one right here, my daughter had a nest of them in her window in her bedroom in Houston, and another animal robbed the nest, and she was so upset, and she called me and said, "Mom, my blue jays are gone, they're dead, and the mother is so upset." And I was like, "Oh honey, I'm sorry." And so what I did was make her these blue jays so that she would be able to have some blue jays to see when she looked at it. So these are special to me because a good friend of mine, Bob Daly, and I started to make them together. He was starting the Paces and Senior Citizens carving group that is there now, and he asked me if I would come and help him. As the group grew, Bob got sick, and he couldn't carve as much anymore. So he'd start something, and then he'd hand it to me, and I'd finish it and paint it for him, and then it would go in a show for him. And then so when we started the ducks, we wanted to finish them together, but we couldn't do it because he passed away. And his daughter said, "Mary, you're the only one that can finish these, and so here is Bob's duck, and you can finish it for him." When you do birds, you do it mostly with power tools and high-speed air tool and things like that. So I hadn't really used knives and chisels very much, or anything else to remove wood from and make something out of it. And so I started. Susan Hendricks was a teacher, and I met her in a class that she was taking, a bird class with me once. And so she showed me how to use a knife and chisels and taught me how to carve all of these little things, not all of them herself, but we just went to class after class after class and enjoyed taking classes from teachers all over the United States. These are all rough outs, and a rough out is something that is made by a machine. The original carver will put it in a duplicating machine, and then he duplicates it out of the wood. Then you put all the detail and a lot more on and take off a lot of the extra wood that doesn't need to be there. A rough out is something that's been done by the machine, but a cutout is where I put the pattern on the bandsaw and cut it myself. And so then I can carve off what I need.
So how do you find
stories?
What was the story behind this?
This one is a dream, and if I don't get up in the middle of the night and write it down, then I forget what I was going to do. There's a teacher by the name of Chris Hammock who helped me draw out the angle and cut the angles and stuff for the knee here, the hand out, the bone in the hand, the flipper in the back. His feet are up here in the back. The little girl's holding back her little brother with a teddy bear to keep him from disturbing the little dog that's going to get the bone. And the cat is what I put there because the path goes through here, but if you don't have something on the back of the path to stop your eye goes right off the piece into somewhere else. So you have to have something to stop your eye. So these are from a book, and the lady showed how to paint them but not how to carve them, and I thought they were so beautiful, and so I carved them and put them up. And they're winter, spring, summer, and fall. These are just some cottonwood bark houses that I've made. They're totally just created out of a chunk of cottonwood that's about 4 to 6 inches wide, and they are open in the back so you can cut through. It is very soft wood, and so it breaks very easily, so when you carve with it, you carve with a glue bottle beside your hand beside you, so you don't mess up the wood. And you just can make all kinds of crazy little houses that are different shapes and sizes out of this bark. There's a little girl giving her dog some medicine because he has a boo-boo on his hind end. And that says dog elixir right there. And there's her stethoscope and then her nurse's thing. She's playing like she's a nurse. And I was a nurse. So and this is called Grandma's Pew. It's one of my favorites, and that is also a Chris Hammock design. They had a contest in a magazine of a cowboy rough out, and they said to make something else with the rough out. And so I made this bird who has no tail because somebody cut it off and it's down here. And his little wings are back there behind holding his butt. Because his tail is down there.
This is amazing.
This is my first scroll saw piece that I got my scroll saw for Christmas this year. You can cut little holes in wood and really make nice, beautiful designs. And this was one of the first things that I did on it after I practiced a little bit. I got the picture from an adult coloring book. I wanted to make the ears pierced, and I wanted to make all of the holes and piercings in it as it was coming down the middle so that it would show the middle and emphasize the middle. And then I recessed the eyes, and then I put paint on. I carved it all and smoothed it all out, and then I painted it all these different colors. And this was a pattern in a magazine I saw, and I debated on whether to paint it or not. I liked it just kind of plain. It was so pretty.
Sometimes less is more.
Sometimes less is more. This was a new technique on the carving of the hair, and so I was learning that technique. You would do a V-tool in on each section and lift up the piece of wood and do a small section about as big around as a dime, and then put glue on it so it doesn't break off. And then you come down and do another small section here, and then glue, and then another section here. So it takes almost as long to do the hair as it did to do everything. Yeah. And of course, the Frankenstein pear there. This is a cypress knee, and they grow in the swamps in Louisiana, and it pushes up, give oxygen for the tree. So that's why they call it a knee, because it pushes up. It pushes up in the water like this, and this is the way it comes out, but it has a skin on it. So people will skin it, and then they carve it. But it has to be carved with power because it doesn't carve well when you go across it because it's pithy wood. So, and I liked carving it upside down, making the head this way and the beard come down this way. So that's why I did that one like that. I often have my husband stop and say, I need that piece of wood when we're driving home. And he'll screech. He's really good with me. He put on the brakes and I run and get the wood. But anyway, I try a lot of different things. I just can't, everything I see is, I have trained my eyes to be more in the artistic level, so I just look at stuff in a different way. But this Indian right here is made from butternut, and she has India ink in her hair, which is a very unusual thing to use for paint for hair, because India ink tends to bleed into the other areas, and I just sealed her and sealed her and sealed her really good so it wouldn't bleed down. These are some of my earlier pieces. They came from Mitkin, her name was. That was her idea, so I just decided I wanted to try that. The horse was mine. I did it in clay first before I started to carve it so that I could get the right angles and everything that I wanted on it. It's sycamore wood, and it's a very good wood, and it's really beautiful. It has its own chatoyancy. All this beautiful light and dark that you see in it is the wood's color. I didn't put it on it, and it was so pretty. I just wanted to just keep it that shiny and nice. And these are kind of rough outs where I learned how to make hair on animals. And these guys were a picture from my neighbor down the street who did wildlife pictures for part of his living, and he would to help him go through school, and he had a picture of two little foxes coming out from under a log, and so I really liked those and I wanted to do them, so I did them in clay first again. When I put my tools that I was going to use, my Fordham, up to it and started to try to carve and base out the base part of it so that I could get it ready to carve in and do the detail, it bounced off. It was so hard I couldn't use it, and that was my big grinding tool. So I had to get a chainsaw out and chainsaw the basic carving places on it to get it all into the order that I wanted it, and then I went in with a chisel and a hammer and chiseled out all the pieces. And I didn't have a project for a winter, and I wanted something to do, and I have to keep my hands busy all the time. I have to do stuff. So this was on my kitchen table doing the Noah's Ark through the whole winter. I started about October and I finished maybe March or April. And I did 2 animals of each one. It's got 32 pieces in it. And I made the animals a little bit bigger because I thought my grandkids would touch them and want to play with them. And they did, but they kept breaking off the ears and the nose and stuff. So I gave it to my daughter and she put it in a place where kids couldn't touch it. The ideas are from Sean Sepa's book. He shows a lot of color when he's in his work. It is so relaxing and so beautiful, and it takes your mind away from all your stress and your problems that you have in your life. And you can sit down and put your head down and work for hours and not even realize you've done it. All my stress and problems come out and come off my shoulders when I do this. And as I've done more and more, my mind sees art more, and I see more beauty in it, and I see more beauty in the world.